me so many things, like how to love and how to lose and how to choose.
Well, hello, this is Linda Carbonell from Walking the Life TV show. Today I happen to have a couple of really good friends. I've got Kayla Schreiner, who is the team member for Walking Through Life, and CJ Charlotte, who is the author, three books now? Or two going on a third. And Kayla, you're writing a book too. So
Right.
yeah, and I wanted to say that the subject matter of your book, CJ, is just, it feels really good to me because as a child, my mother didn't have any help with children with disabilities, you know? And that's where Kayla has had the life experience of that. So I'm really curious about how we can connect to the audience to be able to see what both of you are doing. So, Kayla, I wanted to start with you and see if you had any questions or any thoughts that we could ask CJ. And CJ, I'd love you to be able to talk about your other two books too.
Certainly. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about this new one that you are working on. You did send us a copy of it, but let's tell everyone what it's based on.
The book is Badass Parenting. Prepare your kids to deal with danger without scaring the hell out of them. And it's a very irreverent, funny, snarky, lighter look at how to teach your kids to deal with danger without scaring them to death. And I wrote the book because I had written Badass Girl's Guide, Uncommon Strategies to Outwit Predators, about how to protect women and girls from danger. And then I had grandbabies.
Yeah.
And I started laying awake in the middle of the night, envisioning every awful thing happening that can happen. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I've got to stop worrying and do something about this. So I wrote Badass Parenting for my son and daughter-in-law, actually, to be able to tell them how to teach the kids to protect and defend themselves from danger, how to recognize it, how to avoid it, how to talk their way out of it. So it covers everything from bullying and digital dangers and child sexual abuse and kidnapping and even sex trafficking.
Wow, that's a lot to that's a lot to try to go over, in little meshy minds. I know you had reached out to me because you've had a lot of questions of your in the chapter of your book about special needs and how to handle that aspect on that. And that was great. That was a great, I felt very honored that you asked me to, chip in because I have one, possibly two children on the spectrum and not a lot of verbal communication there. So it's hard to, hey, how do you protect your children from that? And that is something scary, even for children with special needs, not necessarily having to be with autism, all sorts of it. So let's talk a little more about that chapter.
Well, I tell you, I had no intention of adding anything in there like that because I am not an expert on the topic of children with disabilities, although I have a disability myself. But then I was approached by one mom who said, my child has an intellectual disability. Is your book going to cover anything about how to teach my, things, how I can teach my child to protect herself? And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I don't cover that in this book. And then I was approached by another mom whose child had autism, and then another mom whose child was who is autistic. And after about the fifth or sixth mom, I'm like, wow, I've got to do something about this. And so I did enough research to be able to write a chapter in the book. In addition to covering those really tough topics, and again, I lighten them up with a lot of humor and snark and quite a few swear words. I cover by age group how to talk to your child about sex and danger and body boundaries and body autonomy and things like this. So I cover 0 to 24 months, 2 to 5, and 6 to 9 in this book. I'll be doing a book for 10 to 18-year-olds as my next book. But then I added a chapter for children with disabilities. And although I don't break that chapter down by age group because children with disabilities vary in their maturity levels and their ability to handle the information, I leave it to the parents to go back to the chapters on the age groups to find the one that fits their child best. But I tried to address specific issues that children with disabilities might face. One of the first things I learned when I started my research was how horrible the problem is. I want to read some stats to you real quick. People with disabilities, not necessarily just children, with any kind of physical, mental, development, or emotional disability, are up to 7 times more likely to be the victim of a sexual assault.
Yeah.
More than 90% of people with intellectual disabilities will experience some form of sexual abuse, and up to 50% will experience 10 or more abusive incidents. And virtually all of these are by caregivers of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Virtually all of them are by people they know. They're 2 to 3 times more likely to be bullied than children without disabilities. And one report found that 60% of students with disabilities are regularly bullied.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see where, you know, because I was a child that was, you know, mentally disabled, you know, so I can totally identify with um, a mother in that sense, even though I don't have any children, but I have been the child with a disability. And so, Kayla, I wanted to get back to you a little bit in your story. Um, and so, working with the schools and all that with you, with Gabe and how that works out for you, because you have shared some stories of hardship with me about going through the school and the school
Yeah, I mean,
buses.
I that's a huge worry for me,
Yeah.
because he's not very verbal. I mean, he does pretty good about telling me, I had a bad day and this is why, but I have to, like, not necessarily make up a story for him, but I have to kind of try to put the pieces together. And that's one of my biggest worries is, him being mistreated. I didn't want to bring him to school. He's in kindergarten now, and I didn't want to bring him to school for the longest time because, my social media would come up and teachers or other students were just, being bullied. They were just bullying these poor children, and I just did not want to. I wanted to go to school with him, and I used to.
Yeah.
I used to when he was in kindergarten. When he was in preschool, I used to, if he had a hard time getting on the bus with me, I would follow him to school, and see how he did, getting off the bus at school. And I I have to trust now that, he has a pair with him all day long, and we do a verbal communication every day. And I have to trust that they love him and are going to support him as much as myself, as, his family.
Yeah, and that must be hard to have total trust in teachers and all of that. And from what I understand, Kayla, you just share a little video with me as Gabe was getting off the bus, and how hard it was for you to actually have to see that. You know,
Yeah,
because you
absolutely.
couldn't be
He was
there.
having a hard day. Yeah, he was having a hard day getting on the bus one time, and I followed him to school, and I watched as two paras, hand in hand, pretty much had to carry him inside the school, and he was kicking and screaming. One was like hugging him into the school, the other one had, his backpack, and then by the time he came home, he was fine. And I worry because a lot, with my son right now, for the most part, he's in the here and now. So something happened here and now, but we can't reflect on it 4 hours ago because it's done with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, well, I had one more question for both of you, if I could. So, CJ, have you actually worked with people, with children with disabilities that have special needs, or is this something that you're wanting to look into and write about?
I have always been very concerned about um, people with disabilities and their high level of victimization. Even when I was working
Exactly. Yeah.
in Attorney General's office, I was very, very concerned about that. Elder abuse, people in facilities, children with disabilities. But I'm very new to this area of parenting children with disabilities and how to protect them. So I'm still learning. So I'm relying on people like Kayla.
Yes.
And Kayla, if you could read that chapter and note where you have comments and stuff like and questions, that will help me so much to gather the information I need to be able to address the concerns in the book. So, for example, you brought up the fact that your son's not really very verbal. And so how does he tell you? How does he respond to a bully? How does he get himself out of? So a lot of the things I recommend for kids in the books would not necessarily apply to him. And I want to come up with some tactics that he can use that you can use to teach him for how to protect himself and how. So, as an example, I teach parents to help their kids who are being bullied to train the bully to leave them alone. And one of the ways to train the bully to leave you alone is to not react the way the bully wants you to, which is crying or getting upset or fighting or doing whatever, but instead to laugh with them and say, "You're right, I am clumsy," or, and agree with them, or to say, "You're right, my last name does rhyme with bud." And, make a joke out of it, or say, "That's interesting. Thank you for pointing that out," and walking away. And it's always say it and walk away.
Yeah.
For a child with a disability, if they can't verbalize what they need to say, how do they control the situation? And so much abuse. I mean, those numbers I gave at the beginning it's so underreported because so many people can't tell, so many children can't tell, or because the perpetrator is a caregiver, they are afraid to tell because
Yeah.
they rely on that person. They may love that person and not want to get them in trouble. And so I'm going to do as much research as I can based on some of the feedback you give me, Kayla, to come up with some solutions that make this book something that you feel you can turn to and say, okay, I've got some tools here to teach my child how to protect and defend himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, yeah, I mean, especially like if you're in a playground setting, you're getting bullied or, rough or tough, it's hard. Like, does the child, go to somebody and say something, and then have the retaliation be, more of a problem? It's very, it's hard right now, to raise children, any type
Children,
of children.
children with disabilities who are bullied and harassed or abused are protected by federal law in schools. And if and it should be included in your IEP. If your child is being bullied, one of the things you can do is have it included in his IEP. And I don't know a whole lot about this. I got to do more research on this, but that they recognize that your child has been the victim of bullying or has the potential to be the victim of bullying, and make a specialized plan to protect your child. And that may mean getting him out of the same class with the bully, making sure that they're not interacting with each other, their lockers aren't anywhere near each other, that they're in different activities from one another.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
if the bullying ever gets severe, there's recourse for you. Of course, you don't ever want to get to that point, and that's the whole point of this book, is to keep it from getting to the point where you've got to take legal action.
Mm.
What I teach parents is to empower their children. And the most important thing you can do to empower your child, which would have saved me from 99.9% of the abuse that I suffered, is to teach them how to say no, especially to adults.
Yes.
And to teach them to trust their intuition, to set and maintain good emotional and physical boundaries, and then to take action to defend those boundaries and trust that intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many times we make nice. That's the number one reason why people are abused and assaulted, is they make nice. They don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. They don't want to embarrass themselves or the other person. They want to be liked or loved. And so they want to get along. And so when someone says or does something they don't like, they don't say anything, or they laugh it off, or they make excuses for the person.
Yeah.
And they won't set a boundary and say, I don't like that. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Well,
And
and one of the things I was going to say as somebody that grew up with special needs and being disabled or whatever, is that my mother, the screen's on there, Chico, but my mother was the most wonderful person. Can you hear me? No. They're waiting. I was just gonna say about my mother and everything that she learned when she was working with me and my sister that have disabilities. Do they have to come back in?
Do we need to get back in?
We need to restart. Oh, okay. You got 10 minutes.
Okay, tell a story about your mom.
Okay. Well, my mom was so special. And with me having severe learning disability plus mental health disability, which, was pretty bad, I didn't have any real friends at school except for one. My best friend was Charmaine. And my mother saw me get bullied. My mother saw me cry. My mother was frustrated. She didn't know what to do, And so she went to college to actually find out how to become an advocate for special needs children.
Wow.
Yes, and she was able to do that. And even though she can't stop the bullying, she couldn't stop this, she found a way to make me feel like it was okay, that, that I'm all right with a disability or not, that I'm fine. And I think that's why it was instilled in me never to have a problem saying that I have a mental illness and a learning disability. In many
You were
years,
so
I don't.
lucky, Linda, because so many parents
Yeah.
believe the children should just work it out for
Yeah.
themselves or
Yeah.
toughen up or whatever, and the parent doesn't become an advocate for their child
Yeah.
and work to empower them. And so I'm so glad that happened for you.
And I think Kayla's, I mean, I think Kayla's the same way as my mother was. I can see that in her. I've seen pictures of her on Facebook dancing with her kids, and she's just having as much fun as they are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I also do let them fall. I let them fall. I try to, even though they have a disability, learning, and I try to let them, because I see, especially when we go into public places, I hear the kids all the time. This boy won't leave me alone. This boy is following me. Why is he, and I can't step in and say, oh, well, this is why, it's not my place to. I'm not going to do that to little kids. They're just 5-6-year-old kids. They don't understand. And so I have to watch and let him work that out himself. And which, it's heartbreaking and it's also a joy at the same time to watch.
And
That's really important, Kayla, because a study was done with baby chicks who can't swim. And they took groups of chicks and they raised one set of chicks where they stressed them all the time. They were constantly putting them under stress. Another group of chicks were getting intermittent stress and peace. And then the other group were just left alone. And then they put them in the water to see which ones would float, which ones would drown, how quickly they would drown. And the one, which is a terrible experiment, the ones that had been stressed all the time drowned immediately. The ones that had not been stressed at all drowned immediately. The ones that had had intermittent stress are the ones that were able to survive the longest.
Yeah.
And it's very important because you develop coping skills that way, as you know. You develop coping skills that way. You develop resilience. You develop independence and adaptability and confidence in your ability to handle problems. And that's such an important thing that parents need to teach their kids. Let them fall. Let them pick themselves back up again.
I don't think I'd be very good at that, though, because
It's hard.
I'm not very good at saying no to my husband or anybody else. But I know we only have a little bit longer to go, but I want to touch on the fact that Kayla is now writing her book, and I think it's just awesome. So I've been reading some of her stuff, and CJ, I think that Kayla's particular way of doing her writing and stuff is different than yours, but I think that you guys can work together and really support each other and support each other through all of this. So Kayla, I invited CJ's to be a team member. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Awesome.
So Kayla does a lot of Facebook Lives, and in the Facebook Lives that you do on Facebook, you can actually have two people in there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because you got the person here, and then you could have another person in the corner who turns on, and then you could have a conversation. I came across that by accident when I did it with Kayla the first time. But I want to make sure that you guys understand how important this show was to me, and to really listen to you, because it does bring up some of the things that my mother had done way back when. And she went out and bought me a special pair of shoes that she could paint like an American flag, so I'd feel good. She
sounds amazing. Is she still living, Linda?
No, she passed away in 2005.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You must miss her very much.
Well, I talk to her all the time.
Oh,
We have conversations.
she sounds really special.
She is. Yeah, she was really. And she carried on through my sisters too. But I think too that this is a subject matter that could be talked about quite a bit. And I encourage both of you to maybe work together to do Facebook Lives about other questions and other things that can other subject matters or whatever it is that comes up, because I trust Kayla in doing that. And I would love to see you two do Facebook Live together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're the three of us, and there's more in our village that are all on the same page of, bringing awareness, whether, that's ourselves, our children, or, our friends. We all carry some sort of awareness we want to bring
Yes.
to the table.
And that's the thing. That's why it's good for me, because I'm often just stuck with walking through these and being an advocate and advocating for mental illness and addiction issues, and I want to broaden that. So I appreciate both of your help. And Kayla, I want to see if you can let people know how to find your blog.
Oh, well, I do share it on the Walking Through Life page quite a bit. I share it on my personal Facebook page quite a bit. And I believe the site is WIX. That is the site. And the link of it is Hot Mess Mama. That's my blog page. Every day feels like a hot mess over here. So... And I think we might be able to drop the link on the page on this video as well somewhere.
Maybe I can do that. I'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can figure that out. And CJ, I'm just so inspired by you and the things you've done. And I really would like to work with you and Kayla together. I think you could bring a lot to the Walking Through Life page. I really do. And that's what we all are. We have knowledge that we can share with the world. And that's the message that I put out there, And as the producer of the show, it's wonderful to actually hear people that are inspired by it and would like to be team member and, people that I know and trust, But for both of you, I just love you both very much. And you've both have inspired me so much to go deeper and look deeper. I know CJ with your book, it was, it took me a long time to read it just because I'm not reading that well, but it was wonderful because I took part by part by part and did it that way. And Kayla's blog is wonderful too because I'm able to sit there at my own convenience and read it. And that's what's great about books. That's what's great about blogs. You take your time. You don't have to worry about watching the whole thing or whatever. But I want to make sure that that I tell my audience out there that I would definitely recommend Kayla's blog and CJ Charlotte's book. All three of them.
CJ Scarlett.
I'm so sorry. I was,
No problem.
is that me or what? I do it all the time. So
I would say like the color red.
Yeah. So we got about, I think, 2 minutes to see if you guys would like to say a sentence or two to say goodbye to the audience today. Want to start with you, Kayla?
Yeah, sure. So thanks again for having me. I know we've actually been working quite a while to try to get our schedules coincide for the three of us to get together. And CJ, I'm looking very forward to the finish of this book and really promoting it and getting the word out there and awareness out there for, other parents and caregivers, not necessarily just parents, on awareness on this. And like Linda said, my 2020 goal is I'm working on some writing myself, and just keep being for everyone to just keep being kind and humble, and keep spreading awareness in your own way. Yeah, I mean, I could just say thank you for everyone tuning in on the show. And thanks again for CJ reaching out to me and having me help with this book that she's working on. And I can't wait to read the finished product on this, and for everyone to just keep spreading awareness in their own way. And, we all have something to bring to each other to help raise each other up.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Kayla. What good words that was. Raise each other up, no matter who you are. We've got that. When we work together to do this. To share all this important stuff. Yeah. So, I know we've got a few more minutes. So, CJ, I want to make sure that you're able to give the important message that you would like to give to the audience. And also your information. How can people get a hold
Oh,
of you?
yes. People can reach me. My website is www.cjscarlett.com, and Scarlett only has one T. And my email is cj@cjscarlett.com. And I welcome any questions or concerns or anything anybody has. If they have questions they want me to address in the book, they can get in touch with me. I'm working on the final draft now, and we'll be turning it over to the publisher in about a month. So I've still got a little bit of time to get the feedback from you folks. Ladies, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you and to talk with your listeners, to share information about this critically important topic. I was saying a little bit earlier that our kids, overall, the world is a safer place than it used to be. It's safer than since we were kids.
Yeah.
But there are more kids now than there were then, and children are vulnerable, especially children with disabilities and special needs.
Right.
And there's so much that we as citizens, as parents, as grandparents, as caregivers, as concerned people can do to empower our children to avoid danger, to protect and defend themselves when they need to, so that they don't have to ever become victimized. It's easier to repair, it's easier to raise a strong child than repair a broken person.
Yeah, the one subject that I've learned here is that and I see my mother making me very independent, and she did, but also she was going to make sure that I could learn to be independent. I could learn to do my own bills, to pay rent, to do anything. She wanted me prepared to that, so she set that example for me. And the great thing about it, this is another thing I want to say too, is my sisters. Oh my gosh, they were so wonderful to be there with me, And I have an awesome best friend. Her name is Charmaine Stewart, and her whole family stood right beside me, and I had more fun. I'd never had so much fun than the time that I spent with her at her house with her family. And so friends are very important too. That's one of the things that I want to say. And so I know we're all going towards writing. Well, not me. I've done some poems, but that's about it. But we're all going in the same kind of direction. So this is why it's so important that we all work together, all three of us, and do some Facebook Lives and put up on the page important things that affect us every day. And so, Kayla, I really, really want to thank you for all that you've put in and co-hosting with me and doing the Facebook Lives and all that. And CJ, it's wonderful to have you aboard. I can't wait. So I'm going to give you guys a chance to say bye, and then I'll say bye.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining in. This is Kayla Shiner, a team member through Walking Through Life, and have a great day.
And this is CJ Scarlett, a new team member with Walking Through Life. And I really appreciate you listening, and I hope you have an awesome day.
And this is Linda Carbonell, and I'm saying goodbye for Walking Through Life today. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
I would tell you that I still ain't had enough. Walking through this life of mine, well, it's teaching me so many things, like how to love and how to lose and how to